Alright guys, so today what we're going to do is we're going to do an extension of lesson 6-1, and this is still going to build off of your angles. So, what you guys are going to be able to do is classify angles based on positioning on parallel lines, and then find missing angle measures. Now, I'm going to walk you through, like I said, another lesson on angles, and I'm going to ask that you have at least 4 different colors or of pencils, pens, markers, highlighters, etc. for today. It's going to be extremely helpful, especially for those of you that visually like to see and mark up figures. So, classification of angles. Up until now, we've done 4 different angle types. So the first one is adjacent, where you have 2 angles right next to each other with a common vertex and a common side. So what that means is if I draw the figure for you guys, angle 1 and angle 2 would be adjacent here because they have a common vertex and they have this common side. Now, another type of angles that we have are vertical angles. And remember, vertical angles are directly across from one another, and they're always congruent, and they only have a common vertex. So if I were to draw these 2 angles together, so if you have these 2 lines crossing, angle 1 and angle 2 now would be vertical angles because they're directly across from one another. Or I could have angle 3 and angle 4 being vertical. Remember, I said that they make a bow tie, okay? So if you have any family members that wear the bow tie when you get dressed up and stuff, that's what they make. And then we have supplementary angles. So remember, supplementary angles have a sum that has to equal 180 degrees. So you could have a straight line where, like, if you have angle 1 and angle 2, they would be supplementary in this case because they're adding up to 180 degrees. And then you have complementary angles, which are the sum of 2 angles that equal 90 degrees. So no matter what type of 2 angles, like angle 1 and angle 2, would have to add up and equal 90 degrees because that's a 90-degree angle. So we have also been able to use these when you're given pictures of angles. So being able to, like how I drew all the pictures here, being able to recognize them. Now there's other types of angles when dealing with 2 lines. And that's what we're going to talk about now, are parallel lines and transversals. Now real quick, just a reminder, parallel lines, they're never going to intersect with one another. So if I draw those 2 lines right there, they're going to be parallel to one another because they're not intersecting and they're never going to intersect. So 2 lines are parallel. They're never going to intersect. Arrows on the lines indicate that they are parallel. So if you look at the diagram that's on the left-hand side of your notes, but on the right-hand side of the PowerPoint, these arrows right there, they are what are going to symbolize parallel, okay? They're telling you that these 2 lines are parallel with one another. Now, the symbol for parallel lines, imagine it right now. Miss Luby and I throwing our arms up. But they're just 2 straight lines going straight up and down, okay? So, they're just 2 straight lines straight up and down. That's what it's going to mean to be parallel. And the reason being is because those 2 lines are never going to intersect. Okay, just so you guys are aware, parallel lines don't always have to go from left to right. They could also go up and down. They could even be shifted sideways a little bit. Okay, so now we're going to learn about another line, which is a transversal. Now, a line that intersects 2 or more lines is called that transversal. So in the diagram here, this line right here, so the one that I just drew over in green, that is the transversal, okay? Because it's intersecting 2 or more lines. So if you're noticing, it's crossing over at that point and this point right there. So and if you notice, we use another letter, and it's a lowercase t to identify that that is the transversal, okay? So one other thing that's important is we always name our lines. So our first parallel line is L. Our second one is M. So writing it out using my symbol, I can write it as L is parallel to line M. And some of you might be wondering why I'm using the script letter L. Think about it. We talked about this before with doing variables. But why would I choose script letter L over L and saying that that's going to end up being parallel to M? Why do you think I would write it this way versus this way? So like I'm going to put an X here. Well, if you're saying that this L right here looks like a 1, you're correct, okay? So that's why we sticked with the script letter L in order to help us say that. So in the diagram, and this is where we're going to fill in the part that I just went over with you guys. In the diagram, line L is parallel to line M, and the transversal is, and you're just going to use the letter, it's a lowercase t, okay? So just so you guys are aware, we use lowercase to name our lines. All right. Now, we're going to be taking this and taking it one step further. Now's when your colors will be coming in handy. So, we're going to talk about 4 different other types of lines. The first one is a corresponding line. So, corresponding lines are in the same position on your parallel lines in relation to the transversal. So, what I'm just going to say is they're in the same position, just on different lines. So you want to think of it as if I were to pick up line L and lay it right on top of line M, what angles are going to be right on top of one another? Okay, so that's what I'm saying when I'm talking about corresponding. Just so you guys are aware, corresponding angles are always congruent. So we're going to look here to write some examples. And on your notes where there's that big open bar, that's where you're going to write the examples as well. So take one of your colors right now, and I'm just going to start with angle 1, okay? And I'm just coloring in that angle. So now if I were to pick up angle where angle 1 is on line L and put it right on top of line M, I would notice, so I'm thinking in my head, picking this up and putting it right on top, angle 5 is right there with that, okay? So writing it out, I would write angle 1 is congruent to angle 5. All right, so they're in the same position, just on different lines. Now, let's take another color. So I'm going to do angle 2. If I pick up line L again and put it right on top of line M, which one is going to be corresponding to it? If you're saying angle 6, you're correct. Because if you notice, they're in the same position, just on different lines. So angle 2 is congruent to angle 6. Take another color. Angle 4. Angle 4 is going to be corresponding with angle 8. Same position, just on different lines. All right, and then your last color, so I'm going to talk in terms of angle 3 now. Angle 3 is going to be corresponding with angle 7. Comma. Okay, so corresponding lines are in the same position, just on different lines. Okay, so same position, different lines. So my reds are matching up with one another if I were to shift them on top of one another. Purples match with purple, blue matches with blue, green goes with green. All right. And just so you guys are always aware, when you're listing corresponding angles, you're always able to have more than one pair, okay? So with any of the types of angles that we're going to talk about today, there's always going to be the possibility for more than one pair of angles in this case. So that's corresponding. Now we're going to look at alternate interior. So just think about it. What does the word alternate mean? So if you're saying in your head, it's like opposite, different possibility, you're all correct. And then interior is another way of saying essentially inside. If I could spell. So just think about it. Like you have interior and exterior of your house. Interior is the inside. Exterior would be the outside of your house. So this is alternate interior, alternate inside. Well, you might be wondering, well, where is it inside? They're talking about lines. Well, the inside is when you're in between the parallel lines. Okay, so just marking this up for the purposes now. The inside is in between the parallel lines. Now, talking in terms of alternate, that's where they fall on opposite sides of the transversal. Okay, so you need to be on opposite sides now of my green line that I'm drawing in here. So you have to be on opposite sides of that when you're listing the pairs. So you have to be in my blue box, but on opposite sides. So alternate interior. Opposite sides of the transversal, interior to be between the parallel lines. Alternate interior angles are always congruent to one another. So, do I need to worry about angles 1, 2, 8, and 7 in this case? If you said no, you're correct. So that means I'm only concerned about angles 4, 3, 5, and 6. So I'm just going to pick one to start with. And numerical order, I'm just going to start with angle 3. So take one of your colors and just mark up angle 3. So again, we just discovered that I don't have to worry about 8, 7, 1, and 2. So any of the stuff that I just drew in yellow, we don't have to worry about. I'm just concerned about what's inside this blue box. Angle 3, alternate interior angle. So I'm staying inside, following the next part, which is on the opposite side of the transversal. So I have to go on the other side now. And in this case, it's going to go along the diagonal, okay? It's not that it goes right next door. It goes alternate. So you're going along a diagonal. So angle 5 would be its congruent. Okay, so in between your parallel lines, alternate. So you want the alternate position, if you want to think about it. So alternate position. That helps you too. So then if I say angle 4, angle 4's alternate interior angle then would have to be, if you notice I just drew an arrow for you guys, angle 6. So alternate interior angles, opposite sides of the parallel, or opposite sides of the transversal, in between the parallel lines, and are always congruent. Now, like you have an inside and an outside of your house, you have alternate interior angles, but you also have alternate exterior angles. So for alternate exterior angles, now they're outside your parallel lines, still on opposite sides of the transversal, and they still end up being congruent. So in this case now, since they're on outside of the parallel lines, you don't have to worry about the ones inside. You're only concerned about the ones on the outside. So again, listing some examples. Angle 1. And if it helps you, I'll draw in the arrow because I'm going on the opposite side of the transversal, meaning angle 1 would be congruent to angle 7. Now, I didn't ask you guys this question earlier, but think about it. Why would angle 1 and angle 2 not be alternate exterior angles? Pause the video real fast and think about it. Why is angle 1 and angle 2 not considered alternate exterior angles? Okay, so since you guys have thought about it, what I want you guys to realize is the reason why it's not is because alternate exterior and interior angles have to be congruent to one another, meaning they have to be equal, okay? If I were to just say, go with angle 2, think about it. Straight line. Angle 1 and angle 2 make up that straight line. Straight line also means 180 degrees, meaning the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 has to equal that 180 degrees. Just by looking at them, I can already tell that they're not the same measure. Okay? Angle 1 could be simply 100 degrees. Okay? Meaning angle 2 would have to be 80 degrees. They're not congruent then. That is why you have to go in go down to the other line. Okay? Outside the parallel. Okay? And alternate side, so opposite side of the transversal. So now that we clarified that, let's look at angle 2. Angle 2 then would have to be congruent, opposite sides of the transversal. You're then limited to either angle 1 or angle 8. We just went through why it wouldn't be angle 1, so angle 2 is congruent to angle 8. So alternate exterior angles are outside your parallel lines and on opposite sides of the transversal. All right, 2 more angles types to go through. So the next one is consecutive interior angles. So think about consecutive. That means one right after another. Now, they're on the same side of the transversal and inside the parallel line. So same side of the transversal, inside parallel lines. Now, when you get to geometry, you're going to hear these not called consecutive interior angles, but called same side interior angles. And you'll probably hear me say same side interior angles by mistake because of when I taught geometry. But just so you know, consecutive interior angles are on the same side of your transversal inside the parallel lines. So you can visually see same side of the transversal. So I'm going to highlight what my transversal is, line T. And then I'm just going to draw a box in the area of where I should look because it's inside the parallel line. So in between these 2 lines would be where I need to be looking today, or for this type of angle. Consecutive interior angles are supplementary. Remember, supplementary means sum of 180 degrees. Okay? So think about it. All same side interior angles are consecutive interior angles. Since they have a sum of 180 degrees, they're really supplementary angles. So an example here, same side of the transversal. So I'm just going to pick either left or right, and I'm going to go right. So if I say angle 3, and you're not going to say that they're congruent anymore because they're going to have 2 different measures. You're going to show that their measures equal 180. So I'm going to actually say the measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle same side, angle 6, is equal to 180 degrees. And like I said before, you have them more than one pair most likely. So if I look at the next one, if I say angle 4, the measure of angle 4 plus the measure of angle, it would have to be 5, has to also equal 180 degrees. So consecutive interior angles are going to have to add up and equal 180 degrees, being on the same side of the transversal in between your parallel lines. Okay. So that was a lot thrown at you guys right now. What we're going to do is we're going to work on trying to go through some problems. All right, here we go. Practice time. So practice classifying, and Miss Hawes had a typo. But use the diagram and classify each angle pair. Indicate whether they are congruent or supplementary. So pick some of your colors and we're going to be working with them. They're going to help us again. So I'm going to highlight angle 1 and angle 5. Now, before we actually go through, let's just identify what are lines that are parallel and then which one is our transversal. So remember, these little arrows indicate the parallel lines. So that means lines A is parallel to line B, and line C is the transversal. Okay, so if I'm looking at angle 1, so this was 1, and angle 5, they're on opposite sides of my transversal on the outside of the parallel lines. So that would mean they're alternate exterior angles. And yes, you can shorthand to be alt x. And think about it. Alternate exterior angles, they ended up being congruent. Okay, so it's really important to pay attention to what lines are parallel and what line is your transversal. And then just ask yourself, are they outside or inside? In our case, they were outside. And are they on the same side or different sides of the transversal? And in our case, they were on different, so they're alternate exterior angles. All right, I'm jumping over to number 3 now, which talks about angle 2 and angle 3. So again, ask yourself, are they outside or inside? So they're inside. So that means I'm only I only have the option of doing consecutive interior, or I can have alternate interior. Okay? So now I'm going to ask myself, are they on opposite sides of the transversal or on the same side? Well, they're on the same side, meaning I'm only limited now to consecutive interior angles. And consecutive interior angles have to be supplementary. Okay, one other thing you guys can do is do the little bar and then equal sign 180. Okay, if that helps you too in seeing that. Now I have to do angle 2 and angle 4. So this one was angle 2 and then this one's angle 4. So outside or inside? Well, one's inside, one's outside. And then they're in the same position. So that means that they have to be corresponding. And corresponding angles then are congruent to one another. All right, last set of angles that we're going to do right now are going to be our angles 2. So I'm using 2 again, and now angle 6. Again, outside or inside your parallel lines? Well, they're inside. And then are they on the same side or opposite sides? In this case, they're on opposite sides. So angle 2 and angle 6 would have to be alternate interior angles. And alternate interior angles end up being congruent with one another as well. Okay? So guys, it's really important to pay attention to where the positioning is. Again, I can't stress enough how important it is to use your colors. So what you guys are going to do right now is you're going to classify numbers 2, 4, 6, and 8. Remember, you're using the 4 options that you guys have just talked about. All right, pause the video right now and try 2, 4, 6, and 8. So for number 2, you'll notice I just highlighted them, but 2 and for number 2, 6 and 8, angle 6 and 8, they're in the same position, so they're corresponding. And corresponding angles are congruent. All right, for number 4 now, you had angle 3 and angle 7. They're on the insides, and they're on opposite sides. They're alternate interior, and they are also congruent. Then you have angle 6 and angle 7. They're on the same side of the transversal inside the parallel line, so they're consecutive interior angles, and consecutive interior angles have to be supplementary. And then finally, your last set was angle 4 and angle 8. They're outside the parallel lines, opposite sides, so there will be alternate exterior angles. Alright guys, so I'm almost out of time with the first video, so I'm going to stop this part of the recording. This will be part 1. What you guys are going to have to do is tune back in for part 2, where we're going to be finding angle measures. So you're going to have to open up the other video that is there for you guys. Alright, talk to you guys in a minute.